very good evening to all of you. I formally welcome you to the roundtable discussion. It's the first time ever that we're holding a virtual session, but I'd like to believe it's a blessing in disguise, as earlier we would limit it to Delhi NCR, and because of the time and the distance. So now that is taken care of. So we have everybody joining in. Smart-Vocab Challenger had its humble beginning as a contest from creating awareness among students on the nuances and appropriate expression in English in 2003. It has been held every year thereon. We've had over 2 lakh students who've taken the test. We've been trying to venture out into some new cities, and after successfully completing our trial run in Bombay, Raipur, and Kolkata, we are now national this year. And thanks to COVID-19, we've also fully digitalized our platform and we're live virtually now. I extend a special welcome to the Secretary General of SVC Guild, Ms. Dolly Haryal. She's been a distinguished educationist herself. She's an administrator. She's been an administrator, a vice principal of leading schools in Delhi. She's a known author and now spends most of her time doing social work. We consider ourselves extremely fortunate to have her as our Secretary General since the inception. Dolly ma'am, how do you feel about the guild meet being virtual and here?
I think it's been very exciting, in fact, very challenging to move to a digital platform. And this, of course, being the need of the hour. And as you mentioned, Ridhima, all adversity has a silver lining. And this now gives us an opportunity to go pan-India and allow students across India to benefit from our program. So all in all, I think it's been very challenging to go into a digital platform.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I'll introduce the moderator. Mr. Giraj has been moderating panel discussions for Business World, Dainik Bhaskar, Event and Entertainment Management Association. He also curates and moderates a very interesting platform called MAD, which is the Marketing Academy's discussion and debate, where leading marketing and advertising professionals come in. Apart from that, he's a brand consultant and has also helped multiple brands reach their potential. He also holds corporate workshops where he's done over 800 workshops. So without any further delay, I'll ask Mr. Giraj to take over.
All right, thank you, Ridhima, and I think that was very kind of you, very elaborate introduction. I don't think we can have those kind of liberties in a program which is supposed to begin and end in 75 minutes. But anyway, I think it's a privilege to be hosting this. I think we are in fantastic company, and we used to do the SVC Guild meet at the India Habitat Center, and like Ridhima mentioned, we would confine it to NCR of Delhi, and therefore I think today is the first time that we are actually moving out of NCR of Delhi, making the most of the given situation, and I'm so glad that we have people from all over. We have somebody from Saharanpur. We have there's a principal who's supposed to be joining us from Andamans. I don't know whether Vijay ma'am has already joined or not. I don't see her here, but she had said that she had some connectivity issues. Vijay ma'am, are you there? If you're there, you can say hi. I don't think she's been able to make connection. So we have people from Jaipur, from Ajmer. We have people joining from various cities, which is a big thing, makes it more diverse. All right. So without wasting any time, because we are here to listen to the panelists, I would call out names, and I will want people to give a very brief 2-line introduction of themselves so that we can get to know each other better and move ahead. I straight away come to, I begin from the list that I have. So there's no particular order. It's either alphabetical or whatever. It's just the way the team is prepared the list. So I come to the lady from MGD Jaipur. Cherry ma'am, if you can just quickly say 2 lines about yourself so that all the other people get to know you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giraj, and thank you, Ridhima, for the honor and for the privilege of being here. I am absolutely honored to be here, and I really like the way Ridhima said that she's thanking COVID. That's the first time in all these months somebody has thanked COVID. So, effective communication. Hello everyone, I am Cherry Goel and I head the Department of English at MGD Girls School, Jaipur. And I am a very positive person. I love reading, I love traveling, which of course is virtual now. and look forward to a very healthy and a very constructive discussion here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And ma'am, just to tell you that Ridhima has belongs to an institution where we also do workshops on the success mindset, which is all about optimism. So maybe that's some sort of have had some impact on her. I thank you so much, and I now move to Sanjay. Sanjay joins us from Mayo College. Sanjay, a few words about you.
Yeah, thanks, Giraj. Thanks so much. Such a pleasure and such a delight to be here with, to share this web space with all of you like-minded people.
Your volume is still low, Sanjay. I think you'll have to bring the mic more closer.
Yes, yes. Is it any better now, Giraj?
Yeah, much better, much better.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So I am Sanjay Khati, and I'm the head of the Department of English at Mayo College, Mayor. I'm also director of cultural activities here. And just in case you missed out on what I said earlier, it's such a pleasure and such a delight to share this web space with you all. Look forward. Thank you. Thank you, Giraj. Over to you.
Wonderful. And I think Sanjay has been doing a lot of innovative things there, and especially when he's directed over 50 productions there, where he's conceptualized and designed. And I think therefore Sanjay should bring in some more insights into communication skills and about inspiring people. Maya ma'am, I think you are next. If you could introduce yourself.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
It is an absolute delight to be a part of this discussion today. Look forward to an enriching experience. I have been associated with Manav Rachna International School, Chambur. I am presently the headmistress, taking care of the senior wing. And the association with SVC has been quite long. So it is an absolute honor and delight to be a part of this discussion today.
And also, Maya ma'am has been bestowed the Best Mentor Award in the district recently. So I think that's another honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We move on to Leena Dua ma'am, who joins us from Saharanpur. Leena ma'am, 2 lines about you. Leena ma'am, will you please unmute and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mrs. Leena Dua. I am Director Academics, Athenia High School, Saharanpur. And I'm looking forward to a very, very exciting and fruitful conversation. Thank you so much for inviting.
And Leena ma'am actually runs 2 schools. So one is for the people who can afford education, and one is for the for kids who come from families where they cannot afford to pay for education, and she handles both these schools. So that's marvelous work that you're doing, ma'am. I think we really appreciate what you're doing there. Thank you for coming in. Navneet ma'am, you are next. Navneet ma'am from Indian School. Again, a very long association with the school, with SVC. Ma'am, can you introduce yourself, please? Navneet ma'am. Navneet ma'am, if you can hear me, if you can
Yes, I
introduce
can
yourself.
hear you.
Yeah, yeah.
Good evening. I'm Navneet Shergill, the HOD of the English department in the Indian School. And it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this panel to talk about something that is so close to all our hearts as educators, how to communicate with our children, how to get them to communicate with us. So I am looking forward to an extremely fruitful session, and thank you.
And Sanjay, Navneet ma'am also has a Ajmer connection. She
Oh, yes.
So she also comes, she's, I think, Sophia College. Yeah?
Yes, I graduated from Sophia Girls College, and I'm pretty familiar with the Mayo College layout, and our students do come and participate in the debates at Mayo College.
Wonderful. We move on to the next panelist, which is Vandana Bhatia ma'am, principal from Holy Child. Ma'am, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Vandana Bhatia, and I'm the principal of Holy Child Public School. I'm feeling privileged to be a part of all these dignitaries. Although I come from a science background, and it's my pleasure to be communicating with other educators who will be talking about communication skills. So being from science background and communication skills, but yes, barring any background, a person needs to have an effective communication skills. So thank you so much I just want to thank all of you that I'm a part of all of you. Thank you so much.
And I think just again for everybody's consumption, Vandana ma'am also has been designing assessment and behavioral strategies and tools to sort of figure out, and so that she can create, or education can create a positive impact on the on the progress of the students in school. So that's fabulous work, and I think we will dig deep into that kind of understanding also, ma'am, if time permits. We also have with us on the panel Sudeshna. Sudeshna, will you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Giraj. First of all, I should say thanks to SVC Guild for including me in such a nice panel. I'm not an educator. I'm an engineer turned communicator. I'm running one magazine, technology magazine, Electronics for You. Besides that, recently I have launched one portal for education sector where we are planning to highlight different aspects. We are planning to highlight insight, impact related to the future of education. So I am present here as a learner. I want to learn from all the dignitaries present in the panel. And if you allow me, I just want to show a glimpse of that portal so that they can suggest which kind of content we should carry there. And because they are the experts, they know the ecosystem very well. So may I share my screen?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Ridhima, you'll have to give her the permission, perhaps.
Yeah, I've given. Okay, just a second. So this is the portal which we have launched recently. So I will request all dignitaries present here to suggest suggestion, and they can share their views and how we can make this portal, this platform more useful for students, for teachers, for all ecosystem partners in education sector.
Wonderful.
So that's all.
Thank you, Sarashana. Thank you. I think, and they have been our communication partner for this particular SVC Guild meet, the roundtable. And I think it's a privilege to be associated with them. Is Bidisha there? I think I saw Bidisha check in. Is Bidisha, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Giraj. How are you?
Hi, fine. So that's Bidisha. She is been a principal and educationist. She's an amazing singer. I think very recently she started a YouTube channel where she's put an awesome song with poetry in English of of a song of Gulzar, which is mind-boggling. And she does a lot of things. She uses theater in schools. She uses art in schools to educate kids, and she's been doing a lot of work in this sector. Vidisha, privileged to have you here. 2 lines that you can sort of introduce yourself to the panel.
Thanks. Thank you, Giraj. And I think you've done enough of introduction. Don't have to say anything more than that, but I love working with children. Art is my passion. I was lucky to have had art in my life as I grew up. And so I feel it is something art as a tool is very, very powerful. And I think to use art to develop skills is something that needs attention, specifically in our country. In schools and other non-formal learning spaces as well. So that's where I invest my time, and it's absolutely a privilege to be here with so many educators. So Giraj, thank you. I've known of the Vocab Challenger for some time, and I'm hoping to get a lot of insights from all of you here this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We also have Upasna ma'am. I think I saw Upasna ma'am join in. Upasna ma'am, if you joined in, if you can quickly give us your introduction, please.
Hi, I am new to Zoom, so I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm working at the Indian school. I think Navreet ma'am is also here. Navreet ma'am is my head there. And yeah, quite new in this field, just 4 years into it, and still trying to figure out ways to communicate with children and make them communicate effectively. And that's why it's a great honor to be here.
Wonderful. And we have Sunaya ma'am now. I think maybe Sunaya ma'am can do.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, SVC Guild, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Ridhima, for being so persistent on me coming to be on the panel with everyone. I've been an educator for last 30 years, and well, I believe that change is the only thing that is permanent, and well, we all know that we've changed overnight from real to virtual. So that's how we are going to work, and that is the new normal. And I don't know what all changes are going to take place every day, on everyday basis now, I think. So I hope we have a very fruitful session today.
All right, I think thank you so much, ma'am. And if there is any other panelist who has joined in late and I have missed calling out the name, please identify yourself. Otherwise, we straight away start on with the discussions. Any panelist who's joined in late?
I think, hello, Giraj sir, good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. How are you? Okay, you signed in.
I'm good. Actually, I was in another workshop at our school. So yeah, very nice to see you all here. And it's been a long association working with SVC. And
that's Sunita Singh, ma'am. I think I must introduce her.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. So I have been looking forward to this session. I'm very excited, and I'm sitting with 67 intellectuals today. So it will be very insightful, and looking forward to it, sir. I'm working as a coordinator in Delhi Scholars International School. So trying to enhance my skills and creating a lot of opportunities for students. So I will take a lot of things home today from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining. And anybody else whom I missed out, because there are more people than I can sort of see on my screen. So if there's any panelist we have missed out, please identify yourself. Or else I go to my colleague.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, sir. My name is, sir, I'm Suji Jose. My name is Suji Jose, and I'm working as, good evening, everyone, and I'm working as a counselor in St. Xavier's School, Jaipur. And and being a counselor, I feel that this is a great platform, and communication is something very important nowadays. And definitely, I'm looking forward to get some important tips from this SVC Guild. Okay, thank you so much, sir, for inviting me.
I think we will dig again into your experience, because you've been dealing with what you mentioned to me was emotional and behavioral concerns of children. I think that somewhere that plays a role in the way they communicate.
Yes, sure, sir.
So
Definitely.
thank you so much for joining in. I think I will very quickly introduce my colleague Sanjeev, Mr. Sanjeev Malhotra to you. Sanjeev, you can say hi. Sanjeev is the published author. He wrote a fantastic bestseller on a thriller actually on Kashmir, and I keep telling him that he must make a web series out of it, and so that we can make a lot of money. But Sanjeev, being Sanjeev, he's happy having published the book, and now maybe he's writing another one. Yeah, Sanjeev, 2 words before we start.
So delighted to be here amongst all of you, and communication is something which has been very close to my heart, because I was involved in corporate communication for a very long time, and I see a great opportunity in discussing and drawing lessons about communication from all of you. Thank you so much.
Right. So we start off, and I think the topic that we're discussing today is that as educationists, how can we infuse consciousness for effective communication? So I think what I'll do is I'll spin it on the head, and I think I'll go to the panel straight away with a poser, which is that is there lower consciousness today as far as effective communication is concerned amongst students in schools? I mean, are they conscious, or we need to do something? I think, and I go straight over to Sanjay. Sanjay, you would have a take on that. My question is that we're talking about infusing consciousness in school students about communication, but the point is the premise all right? So, I think it's unlike any other moderator. I'm trying to challenge the basic premise that we're discussing here today. So is the premise all right? Do you get a feel that yes, there is work to be done in that area?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Giraj. I think, we're kickstarting on a very right premise. And I think, it's not considered in the setup that I work in. This is something that I've, come across very often. And that is that, English is in a typical boys' boarding school, which is pretty, kind of vigorously aggressive. It's not considered to be, too macho. It isn't macho. It's not a physical language. It's always so easier to, communicate whenever you are, talking in vernacular, or for that matter, in any other local language. So it becomes so much easier. So of course, I mean, we are actually sort of, facing a lot of challenge when it comes to communication, and especially when it comes to communicating in English. Repeatedly over the years, I mean, this is something that we have been trying to drill home, and that is that, in today's day and age, communication is so important. Your entire personality is kind of, condensed to your tongue. You'll be known by the rest of the world, the way you speak, what you speak, and, things like that. So at our end, of course, we are trying to do our bits and things and, bits and pieces. But over the years, I think it's more of a kind of a boarding setup that we have, and especially all boys boarding setup. I think it's more of a social problem, because the moment the boys kind of graduate from here and 6 months down the line, they get back to school, they're absolutely comfortable. There's no kind of, either suspicion or skepticism when it comes to, communicating in English at all. So the essential ingredient was always there, but it failed to kind of express itself explicitly when it came to, in the school setting. So I don't know whether it might be true with the other children outside the boarding school setup. Maybe we could sort of, explore it further.
Yeah, fine. So I think let's explore. I'll go to Leena last, ma'am. I think Leena Dua, ma'am. I think Leena, ma'am, what is your perspective? What Sanjay said, and I think one very interesting perspective that Sanjay brought out was of a boys' boarding school, and English is not considered very macho. I think what is your take on that? That's a very interesting perspective, Sanjay.
Yeah, that's very true. But staying in Saharanpur, English is it is not a native part of Saharanpur, but we teach them. They're very happy, so they feel privileged if they speak in English. So I will just want to do this conversation regarding. I want to ask you all: are you all a good listener? If you're all a good listener, then I will say a few lines where there is a word called listen coming in different forms in it. So please, are you all ready? Because this is a very important activity which we do with our children. And this is dealing with the consciousness also and the question which you asked also. So here I'll start. Listening is an important component of learning. A student's ability to actively listen has a major impact on building communication skills. Active listener show verbal and non-verbal signs of listening. So please, how many times this word listen in form of listener, listening, listen had come into it? Please, can anybody show me with their fingers? If you can. Okay, I can see some. Yes, yes, thank you so much. It has come for 4 times. Yes, ma'am.
4 times, right.
Yes, great, great, great. So that is how we just, make it very interesting for them, because it is very essential that the communication has to be expressive and, receptive. So when this language we have to introduce with the child, we need to see whether they are able to receive it or not. So that is basically, how we go ahead with the language we have to teach the child, especially the English language. So as you had asked.
Wonderful. I think that's a nice perspective. And I think, ma'am, there is a lot of dialogue about, the hidden part of what goes underneath, the spoken word, which is the entire emotional impact of communicating. And listening, of course, is prime. And I think, as a society, as we are growing, somewhere there is this feeling, and we don't have so much experience in schools of checking out listening. But in the corporate world, it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. And I think the younger the corporate executive, the bigger the challenge is. They are very poor in terms of their listening ability. A lot of people listen only to reply. They don't listen to listen and absorb what is being said. So great point that you make. And I'm so happy that I think we were able to sort of count 4 times that you said that word and could come back and pass the litmus test. Otherwise, this entire panel would have felt very depressed, So thank you so much for that, ma'am. I now go to I'll go to Navneet ma'am. Navneet ma'am, what is your take? So we've got two aspects. One, what Sanjay mentioned. One, what Leena Dua ma'am said. Navneet ma'am, what is your take on this? Navneet ma'am, if you can, if you're there and you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go with both of their viewpoints because this is the same challenge that we face in the corridors of our school, we face with our children. They are hesitant to speak in English. It's kind of, they feel that they'll be laughed at or made fun of. Somehow or the other, when I try to encourage them, I ask them the questions, why don't you open up more in class? Why don't you share your views? They feel that they don't have adequate grasp of the language. They are not fluent in it enough, though strangely, they've been studying the same language for almost 12 to 13 years. That's been their medium. But somehow the other society, I think there's a change in perception, how English is viewed. Now there is a segregation. English is become more like a language in which you conduct business in multinationals. But the vernacular rules the corridors, vernacular rules the classrooms. Because as Mr. Khati said, it is, it's not mature enough. So they feel that, to speak in the vernacular, and they take pride in saying we are bilingualists. We can speak in both. And sure enough, when you put them on stage, nobody can make out that these are the same children who speak so well, kind of the words they can use at times. So yes, it is a big time challenge to get them to speak, to communicate in English. But then so are there so many budding poets, so many children, writers that we have who have published their own little works, anthologies. So we do look forward to more overcoming their hesitation. I think maybe the society, maybe, so much of pride in your own nationalism, so much of pride in going back to your basics for roots. Okay, this is who we are. I think it's more to do with this. And viewing English as a foreign language. When you and I studied English, it was like part of us. Nobody had to teach it to us. We grew up in a kind of an English environment, which is not true of the children today. So I feel that, yes, we need to motivate. Now we have to start viewing it as a foreign language and not expect them to know it from birth. So maybe a change in our methodology, maybe a change in our perception. Yeah, I wonder what the other viewers have to say to that.
No, I'll go to Vandana ma'am now. Vandana ma'am, I think we've got three perspectives. Yes, I think the challenges are being spoken about, which is what this entire session is all about. Vandana ma'am, we can get your perspective. Vandana Bhatia ma'am.
Yes. See, where we are talking about consciousness about communication.
Correct.
So that consciousness has to be brought in the mind of the child. When I used to be a student, my principal used to say that, yes, you have to excel in your academics and sports. But she always used to say, your marks are not written here. It is the way you communicate, you get a hold with the person you are talking to. So that is the power of communication. Yes, communication is verbal, non-verbal, as we just discussed. So I go the same way with my students in my school as well. So that consciousness is brought in the mind of the children that yes, when you are talking, you are communicating, you are showing your whole personality, number one. And just now ma'am discussed about being a foreign language and children getting conscious. So in my area or in my school, what do we do is that of course, they are children, and we have, as educator, we have to realize that yes, they are bound to mistake. Rather, we say to err is human. Even every human being makes mistake. So go with it. And I always tell my team of teachers that yes, please don't make a topic of discussion about anyone's communication skills in your staff rooms. So if you are communicating, if the child is using wrong language, wrong vocabulary, wrong, so we can always correct the child. So that confidence should be given to a student that yes, if at all you are communicating or you are not using the right vocabulary, the right language, it is okay. But we can always learn. And similarly, even from today's children, because today we are dealing with 21st century learners. And as most of us sitting here are from the past century. and we need to unlearn and relearn from the kind of communication skills they have. So why only talk about the correct? Of course, that is needed, and that's what we are discussing. But from today's 21st century learners, there are many things that we can unlearn, and then we can also learn from them. And that starts from the corridors of the school, from the classroom itself, and there are n number of activities in the assembly. So knowingly, unknowingly, we can do n number of things with the children to make them a confident and effective communicator.
Yeah, ma'am, that's a good point that you make, ma'am, and I think that's a valid point. But I think somewhere we cannot also ignore that children of today, you know, people, young citizens who are in schools, you know, they have also been, like I keep saying, they've been delivered bad hand for no fault of theirs. They've been brought up in an era where you have so much amount of penetration of the internet. You have OTT platforms where you know, anything goes, and suddenly I think to borrow a word or borrow a expression that the young people use, that Hinglish, which is a mix of Hindi and English, is so cool. And you know, and if it is so cool, so what the hell are we talking about when we talk of purity of language and we talk of nuances of the language? That itself is a huge challenge, and we cannot wish that challenge away, because that's the environment in which children are coming up today. And let's face it, I think the amount of exposure that they have, I'm sure each of your students would be spending anything between 2 to 4 hours on the digital medium, consuming not necessarily language which you and I can be proud of, or you and I are trying to propagate in through various efforts, ours through that small contest that we run, and you because of what you guys do in the school. So I come back to Sanjay. Sanjay, you've seen that impact today. Do you see over the years there has been a decline in the if I can use the expression, affinity towards pure language, towards use of idioms, metaphors? What I feel is that we see and a little bit of research that we've done, we've seen that drop. We see a considerable drop in that. Yeah, Sanjay?
Yeah, Giraj, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, okay, Giraj. The first question that kind of, sort of brews up in my mind, Giraj, is are we looking at standardization, or are we looking at, setting standards? Language, as is the custom with life, I mean, it evolves, it kind of sort of metamorphoses, it kind of dichotomizes, it changes. And, over the years, I mean, what was relevant during Elizabethan age, let's say, for instance, or Shakespeare with English, I mean, it's not relevant today. I mean, it doesn't, of course, I mean, it has got certain literary genius. I mean, there's no denying that. But then, I mean, that language probably wouldn't hold in today's time. Another thing is, I think we as the entire panelist, the entire panel needs to, all of us need to decide today. So what exactly are we looking at? Are we Puritans? Do we want to actually sort of stick on rules and regulations that were kind of, decided long back before we actually sort of came into being? Or do we let the language kind of evolve and kind of, sort of get rich with time and kind of, diversify? So a lot of neologisms that, let's say, for instance, I mean, portmanteau words, and then the younger generation would actually sort of clip words. They would, sort of blend words. I mean, all kinds of, stuff that they do. The acronyms that they use, let's say, for instance, I mean, those acronyms probably, won't hold any sense to you and me, people our generation. But then the younger people actually sort of, communicate in that language, and that's absolutely fine for them. The question is, I mean, do we take a step forward towards them, or do we sort of, kind of reprimand them for the language that they're using? I don't know. But then nobody is perfect. I mean, if you if you think of Shakespeare, I mean, Shakespeare was guilty of double comparatives, the most unkindest cut of all. I mean, he says in Julius Caesar, in Tempest, he says, I think, the Duke and his more braver daughter. So, I mean, this is something that we also need to kind of, sort of reflect on. One is, grammatical dogmatism and obscurantism. And I think it's time, we should actually not get entrapped and ensnared by something that's called as functional fixedness. As is true with life, so is true with language. You can't possibly sort of learn a language by mastering the rules. The same way you can't learn how to walk by actually sort of, mastering the rules of how to walk. I mean, for learning how to walk, you just need to walk. For learning a language, and once again, I'm reminded of this gentleman called Professor Sugata Mitra, the Hole in the Wall project in 1999. I think he's done a pioneering work when it comes to minimally invasive education. He just, we all, and I, of course, endorse him, that we just have to create a minimally invasive environment and the children would learn all by themselves. So all we need to do is kind of provide an environment to the children where the language kind of sort of permeates and soaks and kind of, an osmosis kind of takes place and cross-pollination of ideas take place. And things would, take its own course. And we should actually stray away from rules, the rigid rules that govern the language today, grammatical dogmatism and obscurantism, as I just mentioned. I think it's time, we should stop discerning between what is black and white. We should stop getting suspicious and skeptical of neutral tones. We should accept the language that is being spoken by the generation today. And we must try or make an attempt to actually kind of understand what the young are trying to tell us. Viraj.
Wonderful. I think what you said is quite radical, Sanjay. And I think you use the expression that the people we are referring to, they would say what you just said is epic. I mean, that's what they would say. We have a different connotation for epic. But anyway, I think what you said is extremely bold. I think I think it's sort of it will fall towards being rebellious, in terms of approach to language as an educationist. So I think I'm not qualified to sort of comment on what you said, except that it is rebellious indeed. I think let me go to Cherry. I think Cherry ma'am, if you can sort of add on to what Sanjay said, you are free to disagree to what Sanjay said. In a forum like this, even we conclude in the end that we disagree on these points. I think that's also a way forward, because that leads.
Thank you, Mr. Viraj.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah.
Cherry ma'am.
Yes, thank you. So I
but you have to be slightly more louder.
No, please, after you. Right. So probably I should begin. I agree with Mr. Sanjay when he says that the main purpose now is communication. And when we talk of communication, it is that process of telling and understanding. So we really have to understand, and that is why non-verbal communication also comes a very long way. And see, when we're talking of words, each word has a different connotation. So it is also up to the listener and the perspective in which the listener places words. I'll give a very brief example from what we have as the topic of discussion today. It says consciousness. So consciousness can be consciousness of your own to bring in that what you want to, or it could be your own apprehensions about something. So it could be both ways. That am I very conscious while I'm speaking English, or is it that I'm consciously using English? So for this matter of the discussion, even children are confused with that. Another thing, when we talk of what the child wants to speak, so much is coming from the environment, and yes, this osmosis is very important. We also teach in a boarding school where girls, we have all girls there. They've come from various places, they've got their own cultural baggage. And with the cultural baggage, you also bring a lot of vocabulary, which is sometimes accepted, sometimes not acceptable. So there again, we have a very big issue of something which is acceptable in one culture may not be acceptable to somebody else. Just yesterday when we were talking, it was one of the batches I was teaching. So half full cup of tea. In Russia and countries, it is a very welcome sign if you give somebody a cup of tea which is half full. But for us Indians, it will be absolutely something which is like insult. So again, there's so much that we have to understand and empathize, and then only bring these children to be good communicators. We have to, as educators, understand they are living in a generation of only and only SMS. So for them, everything is BTW. It is always between the lines for them. So we have to really bring them out and make them speak. And if we're doing that in our classes, they are able to speak. And then meaning and the texture and the layers can also be brought in a little later. But at least let them speak. Otherwise, it's so much which is kept inside with them and is creating a lot of trouble. So that is also where consciousness of effective communication should be brought in. So the need and the actual purpose of communication, is it only to show that I am very accurate and I am a perfect communicator, or is it a vent of my feelings and my expression of whatever I feel about something? So very important, and I believe if we as educators do not always intimidate them with perfection and with something which is accuracy all the time, saying no, everything they say, and then beep, 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 beep. So it's gone. After the fifth beep, the child will absolutely be quiet and never speak. So I think we should also be very conscious as to what is our purpose. Is it to let the child speak, communicate, or is it to only correct with a danda always in our hands as no, pronunciation, spelling, intonation, stress? And if you keep doing that, it will become very difficult to be a good communicator. So I think I would go with what Mr. Khati also said, that it's
absolutely. I think I was
absolutely
going to say
functional,
that.
which is important.
Correct. I think so. You are.
Sir, I just want to speak one line about that. What ma'am said. Yes, sir. It is all about, yes, communication, effective communication, as ma'am said. It's not only about exchanging the information. It is all about understanding the emotion as well as intentions behind that information or communication. So it is very important, as ma'am said, it's not like only about vocabulary and all. It should be like, we should understand the feelings or emotions also behind that communication. That is very important. Yes, sir.
The underlying meaning is important. No, thank you.
Okay.
Navneet ma'am wants to join in. Yes. Yeah, ma'am.
I have an observation on this. We are talking of lowering down our standards and of accepting mistakes and going by feelings and emotions. I just would like to ask our esteemed panelists, the others over here, that others disciplines, would they lower their standards? Has maths reduced their level of difficulty, made their formulas easier, physics, science, chemistry? Why are we talking of lowering down our own standards? We are here to teach them a language, and which is the vehicle of their thoughts. They have to convey their ideas, they have to communicate. And the beauty of a language is if you are able to communicate in the correct manner. So that is why I had said that rather than taking it as an ESL, English as second language, let's move to English as a foreign language, where we focus only on the purity of the language, the tongue, and only those children come to us who are interested in learning this language, rather than forcing it on the children that no, this is your medium of instruction and you have to do it, and then we lower our standards. What should we accept mistakes?
Exactly.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to get in. I'm really sorry. This is Deepthi. I'm sorry to get in, but I second this thought of Navneet ma'am. She is exactly and absolutely correct saying all these things. We should never lower a standard. If we are learning German, are we lowering the standards of that language? If we are learning French, are we taking out something different out of it?
I think more apt is what she described when she said, okay, are you compromising on your maths formula or your physics equation?
Exactly.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point you make. I think that's a valid point. It's a contra argument. I think so. We will get to other panelists. I think
I just want to add one point here. I just want to add one point here. So not as an expert, because as a parent, what is my observation? My son is 7 years old and he is a student of the Indian school only. So I think madam is absolutely correct. Navneet ma'am, that standard should not be lowered. But I also support Cherry ma'am and Sanjay sir's idea that there should be a freedom to communicate in other language, and so that the kid can understand the importance of both the language. I think that will encourage him or her. So even to learn English in a better way. So I just want to give one example. We are Bengali, so my son actually in Indian school only. So he got this opportunity. So one teacher, English teacher, I'm really thankful to her. So in English class, so she requested him to sing something, a creation of Rabindranath Tagore, and to explain the thing. And so it was a really an encouraging point for my son. So he sang that song in Bengali, and then he translated that song for his friends. So I think because of that freedom, that yes, that vernacular language is also equally important, and also that singing is another form of communication. And because of providing that freedom, so he was so encouraged. So I just want to mention that, not as an expert, because it was my observation. So I feel that yes, the standard should be there, but along with that, we should focus on the freedom.
No, yeah, I think what we're debating, Sudeshna, is that nobody's challenging the freedom. What we are saying is that how much freedom should be allowed, and there are two school of thoughts there. One is that yes, there should be flexibility, and I think, like I said, I termed Sanjay's input as something which is almost threatening to be rebellious, saying that look, let the kids be, and we must accept the environment that they're coming in. There's no fault of theirs that they've been served a hand like this, that they've been brought up at a time when there is so much that's happening around the world, and they don't have to necessarily look at conventional methods of education. So they don't have to learn from books. I mean, there is Google there is internet, they can search whatever they want, they can figure out whatever they want. So I think their influences today are far too many. Then perhaps when you and I went to school, where our influences was only the teacher. I mean, that was the only influence, and therefore we were brought up in a particular manner. So that, of course, is a point to make. I think I'll go very quickly to Maya ma'am. Maya ma'am, what is your take on this? So we've had two sort of diverse views here. One saying that let's not compromise. Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Sunaya ma'am has to leave.
Okay, Sunaya, so we come to Sunaya ma'am first. Maya ma'am, just give me a minute. I'll come to you later.
No problem, sir.
Yeah. So Sunaya ma'am, I think please, yeah.
I'm really sorry to be barging in.
We want to listen to your opinion on this.
No, I will actually like to just share my own experience.
Yeah.
I have been studying in a boarding school, and as Sanjay sir said, I totally agree with him. Honestly speaking, when I joined the school, I belong to Delhi, and the medium of speaking, in those days, who had the house like where the medium of speaking was English or anything like that? We didn't have that kind of a background in houses. So that was never our spoken language. When I went to the school, I had my schoolmates, the classmates, who had come from good convent educated schools, and they used to read a lot of books. And when I saw them, I think that also played a big part on my developing the language. Nobody forced it on me. I saw my teachers always carrying books in their hands. I saw my friends always reading, which made me also get into reading. I started reading Enid Blyton in class 7. And they used to make fun of me at that point of time, that class 7 Enid Blyton. And I used to be embarrassed, but then I said I like it so much that I'm rereading it. But that built up my vocabulary. And when we say it's not that we are teaching wrong English, first we have to make the base of the child to inculcate the interest of the child in that language. I'm not about teaching wrong English. See, we are in a place where the children are staying in joint families. Grandparents are speaking in Hindi. The children are coming to school for 5 hours, and now that also is not there. So how much can you force the child to speak in English all the time? And anything that is forced, I think, is never taken very kindly. That is what I feel. So let the child be, let the child express, and then there is always a time to keep on learning. Learning never ends. So we can always build up the language. we don't say that you teach them the wrong language, but build up the language. Let them inculcate the interest first. By reading books, the language will be built. That is an automatic process.
Thank you, ma'am. I think before I come to Maya, ma'am, I see Rekha, ma'am, has joined us from DPS Ujjain. Rekha, ma'am, are you there? Rekha, ma'am, has joined us from, she's the principal of DPS Ujjain.
Hello, everyone. I am a good listener, and I have been listening to everything that is that's happening. And I did like the idea of osmosis. I also like the very unconventional idea of language as one needs to go or live by, especially for today's generation. And also, I also would like to endorse that language vis-a-vis culture. I think it's excellent. And I would like to also answer a question that you posed, saying, do we dilute mathematics or sciences, but we may not dilute it because they're very precise subjects, but we do integrate it with modern technology. There's always changes happening, and if one doesn't make those relevant changes, then obviously people will get left behind. So there is a need of the hour to make requisite changes even in languages. But I also endorse what that the ma'am who spoke just now said, that yes, we need to inculcate a very small little town like Ujjain is having does face great challenges vis-a-vis English. Getting them to speak it, getting them to understand it, getting them to be even acquainted with it, even though it's a DPS school, there are intense challenges one faces in the language itself. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll come back to you, ma'am, and I think we'll go to Maya, ma'am, who I've kept waiting. Sorry, ma'am.
No problem, sir.
Your inputs, ma'am.
Yes, basically we are discussing about Generation Z. As educators, we know that communication skill like creativity or collaboration or critical thinking is one of the 4 21st century skills which is very important. I know there are many educators as well who use a lot of informal language with the children to look cool to their students without even realizing the perils of it. It is thereby very imperative to use the effective communication in this rapid age of innovation also. Why I'm saying this is because effective communication is at the core of any teaching learning practice. And it is important that we also develop the soft skills in the children that will help in the transfer of knowledge. Learning, on the other hand, I feel involves listening and accepting the information well. We are, as teachers, as educators, are the role models for the children. So it is our duty to shape the future of the citizens as well. We are the managers of the world's greatest resources. I'm talking about the children here. So simplicity in the language, brevity and clarity in communication by the educators can never be overstated. So being mindful of the aspects of communication again can yield wonders, not only for the children, even for the society at large. So we should convey our points clearly and convey our expectations clearly as well from the students. So how we communicate with the students can actually impact them. We know that communication and education are interconnected with each other. So effective communication has a positive influence on the students' enthusiasm for learning. It is required to guarantee the success of the learners. So as teachers, it is our duty to provide a conducive, healthy atmosphere to the children, which will allow them to participate. We're talking about collaboration here. It will help in strengthening the bond between the teachers and the students and even the other stakeholders that we come in contact with. So communication, we know, is not always innate. It could be learned, it could be acquired. And basically, being an effective communicator, the children always look up to us. So it's essential to be an effective individual, first and foremost, to deliver effective communication to the children. So I would just like to say that without these aspects, neither the teachers can maximize the learning of the students and nor the students can achieve the success. So we know we are talking about progressive society. We have shifted from the teacher-centered society to more of the child-centered society. So it becomes utmost important now as teachers to take the role in using the teaching practices to ensure that the students feel a lot more involved, they are challenged, and hence they learn effectively. So effective communication, I believe, is important to inspire the children, to enthuse them, and to develop them holistically as well. So it is much more than simply speaking and providing information. We are actually helping the children to prosper and to thrive better for the generations to come as well.
Yeah, and I think somewhere, I think in current scenario, we also feel that, if a lot of people feel depressed, not because for any other reason, but because they find it very difficult to open up. And why they can't open up is because they don't have, adequate vocabulary support or, understanding of how to express the emotions of what they're going through. And therefore they cannot communicate. And that further leads to anxiety and depression. And we see that happening all over. We have a lot of people who are very depressed, which was something which was unheard of, and that's perhaps because somewhere I think the point that you also made, ma'am, that somewhere perhaps they're not able to express their emotions as well as anybody who has a flair for the language possibly can. So that's another point of view, and I think we should debate that again. Okay, I now go to somebody who's been a counselor. I go to Shiji, I think at Xavier's in Jaipur. Ma'am, what is your take on this? You've been talking to kids, you've been trying to sort of inspire and motivate them, and to borrow an expression of Maya ma'am, to enthuse them to sort of do better in life. So how do you handle this? You find difficulty because people have they don't have very good language skills?
So definitely, I agree with your point of view and all other panelists also. Being a counselor, really, I face a lot of problems, and I have, I realized that communication is such an important aspect. Let me tell you that I feel like the students who can communicate so well and the others who can't, they feel quite depressed in front of them, and somehow they feel embarrassed sometimes. And the main thing is that maybe they are from different backgrounds also. So somewhere being in big schools, and they used to compare, and that can be one kind of, that can be the reason behind that stress. So communication, though it is very important, but somehow I used to look over the non-verbal way of communication also. That is also very important. It should not be ignored. I mean, obviously we should use proper language, and we should use good vocabulary. Along with that, we should also not ignore the intentions and emotions behind that.
You make a very good point. You make a very good point where there is this complex that students develop because of somebody who can articulate better than what they can, and therefore there is this kind of, it's a beginning of complexities of the mind, and then it goes on and shows up as anxiety and depression later in life. So that's a very valid point you make. I now come to Upasana ma'am. Upasana ma'am, what is your take on this? You heard diverse views, you heard...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would like to say I second Sanjay sir, because I really feel that we need to, just... We can't have rigid rules and then expect children to be confident speakers, because when we work with students, we need to realize that confidence is very, very important. Now, when I talk about confidence, it has to come from the classroom. Okay, because these days they do have a lot of opportunities elsewhere. Like, say, these are the kids who use Instagram, these are the kids who use Facebook. So if they don't develop the confidence in the classroom, they will develop it elsewhere. And if it's not coming from the classroom, in that scenario, what will happen is, if they're not in love with the subject, then forget the rules, forget everything. They're not going to study the subject.
Okay. So I think therefore you linked it to inspiration, and therefore giving up on the language and saying that, okay, this is not something which is my cup of tea. But
yes,
I'll come.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I think there is one issue that I must bring to the panel, and before that, I think that's an important issue, which is, and in the corporate sector, what we find is there is this huge difficulty of people who are otherwise extremely capable, very competent, but they can't write a mail to save their lives, And, that's something that Sanjeev and I, we encounter every day. We do a lot of sessions and workshops at the corporate. You find brilliant chaps, they're very good. They're fantastic engineers. They know coding very well. They're fantastic salespeople. They're fantastic marketing people. Very good HR people. They can talk all right. They can talk all right. They can impress. They can display leadership skills. You tell them to write what they have discussed with you on a mail, and I think that mail is something that is a disaster. So and therefore a lot of corporates have now started doing something to help these people fine tune their language, especially written English. So that's another aspect that we are facing. People who've gone to IITs, IMMs, and they come to the corporate sector. They get a very high placed job. It's a significant job that they get, very young in age, make a lot of money, travel the world over, but they can't write to save their lives. So that is an aspect I'll come back to. But before that, I think I know I'm moving up the level. I'll come to Sunita ma'am. Sunita ma'am, what is your take on what have you heard and what do you make out of this? You will have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Sir, I have been listening to everybody, and I think everybody is making a very valid point. Communication, effective communication is more than exchanging information. Basically, it involves listening and speaking both. So one has to be a good listener first, and to speak to the other person. But what the other person is speaking is very important. So we have to give them a very correct information also. So we cannot compromise on correctness here. So at the same time, seeing like Indian cities are the melting pot of culture. We have people coming from rural backgrounds. So all kind of languages and vocabulary, like Cherry ma'am said, we are getting. So we have to let them speak, yes. We have to generate their interest. We have to captivate. We have to make the language impressive. And we have to present it in such a way that they start speaking, they develop love for the language. But at the same time, we cannot compromise on the correctness. We have to correct them. So both ways we have to, take a middle path. And for that, we have to provide a conducive environment. Yes, at the same time, emotions, and I have felt that children, they speak, when you put them on stage, they are comfortably speaking. They have learned their script and dialogues. But when they're speaking among the friends, they say we are not able to, share the emotions and intention. So we don't feel comfortable. So they come back to their vernacular language and just, to be comfortable. So they're not able to come out of their comfort zone maybe. So sometimes we have to give them that freedom also. So that's what, yes, and definitely the use of idioms, and this is missing from our side also as teachers. We are the role models. So our English teachers are not using idioms, proverbs. So we have to use first, then only we'll expect. So whatever, we want them to be good listeners, but what we are presenting, that matters a lot.
That's a good point that you make, ma'am. I saw Vijay ma'am from Port Blair join in for a while. Vijay ma'am, if you're there, you can say hi. I think she had an intermittent connection. She came and went back. I don't know whether she's still live right now. And no, I think she's missing. Anyway, so I think I'll come back to if I can call Sanjay the culprit, who took this debate and this forum and twisted it around and brought in this complete concept of a very rebellious concept of, we should allow give that kind of freedom. Now, how much freedom are we willing to give? And also, I think that very valid argument of, that if we are not willing to give that freedom in sciences, fine, I understand sciences are exact, it's a subject of exactness, that you got to be precise and exact. You can't sort of go wrong in your calculations. But I think so is a language, a language is a protocol. Yes, it changes. Even the dictionary keeps adding more and more words. Every year there are more words being added. For example, you could never find a word like a selfie in an Oxford dictionary. I think 6 years back they included a word like selfie. I don't know whether they'll go back and give a new meaning to things like epic or cool or whatever. So it's not that the language is not evolving. I think English also, by the virtue of the fact that the Britishers ruled at various places, they absorb words from wherever they ruled into the language. So you have words like pajama and bungalow and all those words having crept into the Indian language, into the English language. So the language itself has been evolving and flexible, but there is still a protocol that that purists want to sort of imbibe in students. So now, having heard everybody's viewpoint, Sanjay, what do you have to say to this?
Giraj, I hope I haven't really stirred too much controversy today, this evening.
No, we love controversy there.
Okay, okay.
All right.
So I think, one thing that, endears English to me, and one single, thing, one singular thing that endears the language to me is that it is extremely promiscuous. And that is what makes the language so unique, so outstanding. Because, rules, regulations all occupy a kind of a corner in the room where you are, talking about English. It has got strange bed partners. And the reason that this is the precise reason what makes the English so rich today. So, it's like a test cricketer. If I can give that analogy, it's like a test cricketer who has mastered the laws, the techniques, the niceties of the game, but who in that particular moment of gay abandon, in that particular moment of inspiration, motivation, forgets them all in one glorious sweep to the boundary. So while we know the rules, while we know the regulations, but when it comes to the flourish of the language, when it comes to the gay abandon of the language, when it comes to, seeing the zenith of the language, we'll have to keep the rules aside. I think that's one important thing. The other thing that you just mentioned.
That's Sanjay, but I think earlier, so what you're saying is what the license we used to give to poets. When we would say
Absolutely.
that there's a poetic license, what you're saying is that it's time to extend that license to prose as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the only way, Giraj, by which we can actually sort of connect to the young generation. If we can't get them, we don't want them to be entrapped, enslaved, and mired in mediocrity of rules and regulations. That's one thing. The second thing is what you just mentioned a little while ago. Indo-Germanic languages are just the same. Language is so promiscuous. That's the reason why there's so many, Indian Hindi words in the language. And that is precisely what makes the language so rich. Also, two thoughts, Giraj, quick word on two schools of thought. One is that, you can't possibly learn a language. You can't have a felicity with words till the time you have this FOXP2 gene in your 7th chromosome. Now, this is one school of thought. The other school of thought is, first 2,000 days of your life, if you learn the language well and good, if you haven't learned, you're misfortune. You can't do anything about it. So there are two thoughts. But at the same time, we do know about the neuroplasticity of the brain. We know how neural circuits form. We know what reading can do to you. We know how the synapses can go, berserk, and all those kind of things. And we as, educators need to, cross those frontiers and try to explore that realm, which hasn't been, explored by teachers till now. So we need to talk about that. And I think, that'll make a lot of sense. Vocabulary, active, passive. What is the significance of active vocabulary? What should be an ideal vocabulary look like? What should it look like? This feral child, Jeannie, who was rescued at the age of 13, had this, vocabulary of 6,000 words. A normal person would have a vocabulary somewhere between 20,000 to 80,000 words. Now, irrespective of how many linguists were working with this feral child all throughout her life, she could never ever exceed 6,000 words. So we have to actually sort of give, due respect to those linguists who think that, first 2,000 days of your life, you learn the language well and good. If you haven't, then you are, handicapped for life. So don't know about it, don't know. And we are trying to find it out every day. And we are trying to sort of, find out and by experimenting with our children, by interacting with the children. And if the children have come to this today, we have to come to terms with the fact that, we have to get down to their level to forge a kind of a connect with them. So that's very important.
Wonderful. I'll come to Vidisha now, who's been quiet all this while. Vidisha, you've heard some wonderful inputs from this August panel. What is your take? You've been working with children in various ways, involving them in theater, involving them in, I think you just did a program on filmmaking. You curated something at the Explored Hub on filmmaking of young kids. You used art as a form of communication. Your quick take on what you've heard.
Thanks, Giraj. I don't envy your position as a moderator today because I think so much has been shared, and as I'm listening, hoping to listen deeply, is that I think a lot has been shared from various different sort of vantage points. So I just I have more questions rather than, any comments as such. I'll start with Sanjay because I think I align to a certain radical thought around learning itself, and that's why I think very importantly, one of the questions that comes to my mind, and this is for everybody, is that while we are discussing about effective communication and how to develop effective communication among children, have we thought about our communication with them? You know, how do we communicate with them? I mean, I learned communication through people around me and how my teachers communicated with me, how my parents communicated with me, how society in general behaves with me. So
I think
I mean,
Maya ma'am, Vidisha had touched on that. Maya ma'am
yes, exactly. Yeah, I think,
yeah.
Right, absolutely. And I think communication being such a large area to actually, you know, communication is a lot also about what is not being said, you know, rather than what is being said. So we've talked about a lot of things here. I mean, we're talking about speaking, we're talking about reading, we're talking about writing. But if we were to always link, you know, communication and confidence building, especially from the language perspective, right? I don't know, there are lots of English educators here and other educators. How do we learn a language is my question, you know, and can we learn a language? Do we learn a language through first being told what are the rules of the language, and that's how we learn it? We learn it of what we hear, right? And I mean, if that's how we learn a language, it is natural for children in India to Navreet ma'am's point, I think, you know, the idea of whether it's a foreign language or not, you know, children will learn what they hear first, yeah, and what is the environment in which they hear the language. I remember working with a couple of teachers in the state of Sikkim, and it was very, very interesting. Why I'm wanting to share this point is that the English teachers complained about children not speaking in English in the school. And while we were in the discussion, the teachers spoke to each other, right? So I asked them, I said, which language do you speak to each other? So they said they spoke in Nepalese and they spoke another dialect of Sikkim. And we expect that our children will speak in English. So, you know, to the point of communication, I think it's very important to really reflect as educators on how are we communicating with them? Are we listening to, Leena Dua ma'am talked about active listening and deep listening. I think, do we listen to our children? Do we listen to what they are saying or not saying? You know, so I think those were a couple of points. Also, the other thing about, I think there was a discussion around accuracy. Again, I'm not a language teacher. I've worked with children through theater, through arts. A lot of language development has happened and a lot of confidence building has happened. So, you know, constant correcting children, I don't think ever works. And all of you have been teaching for many, many longer years than I have. You know, constantly telling them what is right and wrong doesn't, in my mind, is not at all effective.
I think that this panel more or less had a consensus on. I think that
yeah, but you know, Giraj, to my point, in school, because our subjects are taught in silos, you know, I mean, how can we talk about language and not talk about history, not talk about culture? And because we teach all of these, and it's not about reducing the standard of teaching, but it's the way we teach. We teach subjects without interlinking them. But that's not how we learn. If learning is to happen, then you have to see those interlinkages. So just looking at language again, you know, as a separate entity and not seeing the other points that connect, I think defeats the purpose of talking about communication. If we were to talk about effective communication, it's not just about speaking English well. And it is sad if we think that, you know, children who speak well in English are smarter, are more confident. I think in smaller, and there are many people here from various parts of the country, I think it's so important that children develop confidence from where they are. You go from near to far, you don't go from far to near. You know, so where do we start that learning process happening? I think my discomfort with some, and I don't know if there are CBSE principals and teachers here. I mean, I'm sorry, look at that English in CBSE. What is that? Is that communicative English? Is that literature? What is it?
Well, I think we're recording this,
really
Vidisha, so I
sorry,
think we're recording this, so I think no word on CBSE at this point in time. Also, I think you raised a very pertinent point, but you also, the question that you asked, you answered it yourself. And I think the answer lies in what you, in the narrative that, that you gave after the question that you posed. I will very quickly go to Dolly ma'am. Dolly ma'am has been very quiet as Secretary General. I think, aren't you inundated with so many concepts and so many ideas? And I've done a very smart thing, folks, and I've decided that as a moderator, I will not conclude the program. I've put out Sanjeev, if I can use the word, to sort of conclude the session eventually. So that's a smart one. Also, Sanjay, I wish that my kids are not listening to this program, because tomorrow if I correct them in English, they're gonna blame it on DNA, and they're not gonna blame it on schooling or whatever. Even though one of the principals here from Ujjain, DPS Ujjain, is been one of the favorite teachers of my daughter. She's also here, and she just spoke, Rekha Pillai ma'am. So I seriously hope the kids are not watching this program somewhere else, because they'll come back and say, don't correct us on English language. It's in our DNA and you are to be blamed for it. Okay, Dolly ma'am.
While listening to you all, just thought struck me that could falling standards also be attributed to the fact, like Vinisha also had brought out this point in her own way, that English, we are not integrating it into the other disciplines. So that if you are a history teacher or a science teacher and you're looking at any kind of inputs from the children, you are only referring to certain keywords and you feel, okay, now the concept is done, okay, give them the marks. You are not trying to see if they are following the proper English, aspects of the area. Like when we were in convent, we were told, start with the introduction, you have a body, you have a conclusion, and that is for every discipline, irrespective whether it is history or whether it is, any kind of area. But this integration into disciplines has disappeared now from our curriculum. Could that be one reason for falling standards? And some schools have begun to realize this. And I remember when I was teaching in Bluebells, we did have an issue on this. And so our principal told us, across board, we will take up a topic, like supposing you're taking up seasons, then you're doing it from the geography point of view, you're doing it from an historical point of view, you will also do it from an English point of view. And everywhere you will see that the child follows the same certain pattern, a certain standard of English area. And we did find that there was improvement when we did that. Wonderful. Do you think that could be in some way, that was Madisha's point. Yeah. I mean, any other school could take that up, because that we saw quite a bit of improvement when we did do integration of English with the other disciplines.
Bold step, very bold step, I think, and fantastic. No, I can also narrate. I realized something which is personal, which is, I was doing maths, and we were taught a subject called lattice theory, and it is after having been in the class for a month, like later I discovered the English meaning of lattice, and suddenly the concept became so clear, which my math teacher found it very difficult to explain to us. So I think that integration that you're talking about of and not teaching subjects in silos, I think that point that Vidisha made a super point. And maybe that's the reason why Vidisha's efforts of theater and art, because then you are also getting other forms to express yourself, and then everything gets integrated in the mind, and that's the way it is. Sanjay, your last thoughts on this?
Giraj, don't know what to say. I mean, we have to, kind of revolutionize everything, the way we teach and the way we do and the way we transact business in the class. I think it's extremely essential. But I think, as you just mentioned a little while ago, theater is one thing that can change the landscape when it comes to, language learning within the country. I think theater is one complete art form. And I've tried doing this at various forums, For example, I had to teach.
You've done some 50 odd productions,
yeah? 50 odd productions. And I have had the privilege of working with people like Habib Tanveer and Gareth Armstrong and Amir Raza Hussain and all these guys. And I've learned so much from them. You're teaching them iambic pentameter. You translate Molière into verse plays. And you do it without telling them that you are actually, teaching them iambic pentameter. We just, this last year we did Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, and what a learning it was. And towards the end, without actually sort of explaining to the children what existentialism meant, we could, convey our point across. So theater is one thing. It gives you confidence. It gives you poise. It teaches you the importance of a machine. And this is what I'll strongly advocate to language learners, that they need to use a machine, because the way I'm sounding to you is not exactly the same way I'm sounding to myself. A lot of breathing exercises, and that will actually sort of, assist in in building confidence, and that confidence would be reflected in linguistic ability as well. So I believe theater, non-technology tool, it's a very, very vital tool that we can employ to, enhance and enrich language.
Right. I'll come back to Leena Dua, ma'am, because she talked a lot about. Yeah, Cherry, ma'am. I think you sent a message also.
I kept my hand
I saw that. I thought I'll come back to you. Yes, please.
But yes, I just wanted to make one brief point here that I'm sure we're not talking of lowering the standard of the language, but we are only talking about distinction between the purpose of use of language. Whether it is for a classroom formal teaching learning or sometimes only for the purpose of communication. So my rubric or my purpose is very decisive in terms of my standard or my benchmarking going up and down. So that is also an important point. And when we talk of French and German, let me tell you, when we're teaching children French and German, they're only writing papers. They're not using it for communication in India, the French and German that they're learning in the school. But we want them to think in English, speak in English, write in English, walk in English, talk in English, eat English at the same time. So we kind of expecting a little more and let them learn at their own pace, give them that time. But yes, of course, in my language class, I'm not lowering my standard. But at the same time, when I'm only communicating, I may do a little dilly-dally and then come on to the nuances of the language in a roundabout manner. As Mr. Sanjay says, theatre is one very good opportunity for that. So yes, we're not lowering, and your English, your children's English is in safe hands. Please don't worry.
I think that's a valid point that you make, ma'am. And I'm sorry, I saw your hand, but I took some time. Yeah, ma'am. I'll come to you, ma'am. Just give me a second. I think Leena, ma'am, has been speaking to me of silence and listening.
I just want to add.
I think Jyoti, Leena, ma'am, I'll come to you. I think you've demonstrated fantastic listening skills yourself. So please, ma'am.
I just wanted to put one point forward. It is the language is a very, very important thing. First thing, we cannot be judgmental and let the child at least speak out what is there in their mind. Language, of course, the teacher needs to teach them and they will align the child, but the thoughts needs to be expressed first. Let the child be free, and that is where the auto learning process comes into being, that the child is going to learn from the environment, from everything. It's very true, we are going to eat also English, we have to think English also, but we need to first express ourselves, and that is what is going to liberate the child. So that, thank you so much. I just wanted to add that.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, fantastic. I'll come to Vandana ma'am. Vandana ma'am, you wanted to say something very quickly.
Yes, after listening to all this discussion, and that's how we started, and that's how I put my point across. The language is not to be taught as a language. English, why are we? Of course, English is one of the subjects, but yes, it is the major medium of communication, and it is the transdisciplinary approach in the school, and that's how we are learning. And knowingly or unknowingly, the child learns. If we talk about, let's say, I'm a science person, and I've been experimenting with this flip learning, because we talk about student-centered approach nowadays. So I've been experimenting with flip learning and scanning, skimming, all these things in which children are, of course, the concept is there. We are not lowering the concept or changing the concept. That is there. But when they are communicating, English is used as a medium of communication, and they are giving their thoughts in that. So in a way, knowingly or unknowingly, they are learning that language. So it's not that we are teaching that language, it is a mode of communication. And of course, like theater is being talked about, so similar way, there are n number of ways in which English can be done in other subjects also, because other subjects are being taught, English is the medium. So without making a distinction, we can always have that flair for learning without making the child conscious, the way we started, conscious of learning or conscious of speaking. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I think we are running out of time, because we normally conclude our guild meets, roundtables in 75 minutes. And we started at 6:04. It's 7:27. So I think it's time now to conclude. I would have loved to take some questions because we have a whole lot of audience, teachers who are in the audience who would want to raise. We can take in 2 questions, out of sheer respect for the fact that they've been so patient listening to all of us. Anybody in the audience who's not on the panel, if they have a question, please sort of put it on the chat. We will take it up. We'll take the first 2 questions if anybody has to ask. So that's open, and I think I must also confess that I think I've done a terrible job as a moderator, because the topic was how to infuse enthusiasm in kids on sort of getting to know a language. But I think the entire discourse changed to whether it is a significant point in the first place or not, and we got discussing that, which also means that we would come back in 3 months' time and do the next roundtable with this as a backdrop, and then look at, okay, now that this is the backdrop, how do we now go and enthuse and motivate and inspire students to sort of take to a language in the way they need to take to the language. Do we have any questions coming in, Ridhima? If you have any questions coming in from any of the people on the chat, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll come for one last input to Navneet ma'am. Navneet ma'am, you were wanting to say something, please. If there's something you want to add before I go to Sanjeev for conclusion.
I think Mr. Shakti from Mayo Ajmer, that would be him, Mr. Khati. Yes, Sanjay. Yes, we've been listening to you with such rapt attention because you're such an impressive speaker. Now, I just want you to visualize a scenario. A gentleman not as accomplished and polished as yourself or as fluent as yourself in the language, would we have been listening with the same rapt attention and soaking in the points? What would our attitude or how would we have viewed such a speaker? So just food for thought. This is just food for thought, not for taking it any further.
The bull by the horn, ma'am. You really got the bull by the horn. Like that's Sanjay. It's a compliment also.
It's a compliment.
It's a compliment.
Thank you so much.
It's a challenge also, and it also is indirectly telling you that, look, buddy, you hijacked the entire phone.
I'm so sorry about that.
And we allowed you to do that, because of the
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I think you're most welcome. I think it was a delight. It was a delight having you and saying what
absolutely,
you said.
Absolutely. And second point I would like to make is that we, teachers of English, are guilty. We are guilty of teaching our language in the incorrect manner. I've been hearing this time and again. First, the rules are introduced, and then we give 5 sentences to the child to, apply the rule and solve the problem. But have we ever tried to create a classroom where the child constructs the rule and not? Why are we exposing? I mean, Upasana is an absolutely fantastic teacher. Her classes are the most robust, and she has the most active activities happening. She's really vibrant. On the other hand, when it comes to teaching words and their meanings, I see teachers coming up with worksheets which say, find the meaning of the words and then make sentences with them. How unimaginative and uncreative can you be, lacking in creativity? The child has to depend on the father, the mother to look for the meaning, give it to him, then help him construct a sentence. Obviously, right from the elementary stage, we are building resistance to a language. So I think next time, in the 3 months' time, you can put this point as well, that how we as teachers of a language can improve our teaching methodology.
No, we have, I think, out of this, because I think this was the first time that we were doing it online. We've never done it online. So I think we've learned a lot. And I think you've been wonderful panelists, because I think I was fearful, and Ridhima was more fearful than I was, that it might just become a Arnab Goswami kind of a thing where everybody's speaking over each other. But thankfully, that's not happened, which is thanks to each of our panelists. I think you've been so very well behaved, wonderful moderating this. I will now give that difficult task of concluding what has happened. If you can conclude, Sanjeev, and you have only 120 seconds to do that, because we've run out of time. Yeah, Sanjeev.
It's been a very, very diverse discussion, and I think, but at the same time, there have been some themes which have run through, everybody. So let me sort of start from the beginning, where where we said that Sanjay mentioned that English as a mature language is not something which the kids want to speak amongst themselves, at least. And I think Maya ma'am also resonated the same thing. No, what is Sunita ma'am also resonated the same thing, saying that when you put them on a podium, they may be able to speak the language well, but amongst themselves, they don't find it appropriate to express themselves. So that's one important point, I think. that maybe we want English or to be all pervasive, but maybe that's not the way things would be. Maybe since most kids are bilingual or even trilingual, they would use languages as per what they feel best about it. So that's one question. I think that the other big theme that has been running is purity versus dilution of language. And I think if you look back, there are certain situations in life, certain professional situations, certain formal situations where purity is extremely important. And I think that is why a lot of our participants, and especially Namjeet ma'am and a lot of other participants also emphasize the need to have a structure and not just throw it out of the window completely. At the same time, like Rekha ma'am talked of the osmosis of language, and Sunaina ma'am talked of how what is the environment under which you learn the language. That is important. I think that is also referred to by Leena ma'am, that environment it's very important. So what we teachers, students, what do we sort of offer as the environment to our children is extremely important. But really, the whole point I think is that consciousness needs to be there, but at the same time, the generation kid will have his own style. He will do things in his own way. He lives in a world which is different than what the world that we grew up in. So you can't accept him to follow the same practices. So whether we like it or not, he will have an SMS language. But what is important that he also develops that language, maybe which will help him, move from what Sanjay sir mentioned, that once they go out of the school, if they come back, they're able to express themselves and speak very good English and completely. So that innate ability to communicate in multiple languages and communicate, because communication is a slightly bigger thing than language. It also involves listening. It also involves having a cultural context to what is being said. So these skills still need to be taught, and whether they're taught in a very forthright manner or they're imbibed in the environment, I think is a question that we leave to the teachers and to the existing educationists here. So it's been a very, very interesting discussion. I think I personally learned so much from this, and there were so many aspects which sort of I didn't realize. So,
and also I think, Sanjeev, I think there's a lot of work for us, because I think suddenly I think we have an inventory of about 6 or 7 panel discussions, round tables that we can hold. So I think from a biannual thing, Dolly ma'am, we'll have to bring it to a quarterly thing at least. And I think if the panelists are supportive and as exuberant and as expressive and as vibrant as they were in this discussion, I think we are on something very good. Yeah, Ridhima, all yours.
I just want to add one point. I think it's also been, I think, Giraj, you would remember that, whenever we have had our previous discussions also, we've been very, very impressed by the depth of commitment and the depth of knowledge that our educators bring to the children. And that is extremely, extremely sort of, very, very gratifying to us. And we're really grateful for all of you to do that. We have some great examples. In fact, at one point of time, we were thinking that we'll do a book on how the innovative things that are happening in schools, which is not talked of too much. But I think today, again, that comes to my mind. So thank you all. Thank you all. Over to you, Raj.
Yeah, Ridhima.
Sorry, I thought I was muted. Thank you so much for being here. It was a very great learning experience. I have never been on this side of the table so much, so I'm getting to learn and getting these new perspectives, which is really nice. I'm so grateful and thankful to all of you for being here, and I hope we see all of you next time as well. So thank you.
I think maybe we can request Dolly ma'am to say the formal, as a Secretary General, to sort of formally thank everybody. Dolly ma'am, over to you.
I think it's my pleasure to have you all aboard today. And I thank you all for being present and giving us your valuable time and your valuable inputs. I'm sure we have noted, and when we next meet, we hope we have much more progress to comment and report on. And we hope that we will be having a lot of more contributions and a lot more, discussions like these in the future as well. Thank you once again for being part of our discussions today.